Tom, who will get in tomorrow into the Baseball Hall of Fame?
Well, the announcement later on today, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure Jeff Bagwell and Tim Raines are going in. And then the question is, who gets in? If anybody else after that, it's going to be real close between Vlad Guerrero and Trevor Hoffman. You need 75% of the vote to get in, and those guys will be really, really close to that number.
Tom will be part of MLB Network's exclusive Hall of Fame coverage beginning today at 3 Eastern. The election announcement will be at 6 Eastern. What happens first? Bonds and Clemens go in, or Curt Schilling?
That is a great question. You come up with the best questions. You know what? Probably Bonds and Clemens have a better shot, and I wouldn't not have said that last year. But I can see things changing, Dan. The biggest thing that jumped out to me this year is so far 12 first-year voters their ballots have been identified. 11 of those 12 have voted for Bonds and Clemens. And you're talking about two guys who never got over 50%. Now they're trending 92% with first-time voters. And that tells me the younger guys who didn't cover the steroid era don't care about PEDs.
What do you think it's – because I think that this could be the most important ballot we've ever had in the Hall of Fame history. And maybe I'm overstating it, but if we start to look at Bonds and Clemens creeping up towards that 65% or 60 or even close to 70, whatever it's going to be, what's it mean for these other players, down, the next couple of ballots here? Am I overstating the importance of the voting in regards to steroid users?
No, I think you're right. And I think one of the keys, and you mentioned this, do they get over 60%? Again, they haven't been over 50% yet, so that would be a big leap. And I think if they get over 60 with 5 more cracks on the ballot, good chance they get those last remaining 15% or so to get in. And then you make a great point. What do we do about guys who are on or off the ballot already, like Mark McGwire? Do we go back and take a mulligan on those guys who are kept out because of PEDs? So, yes, I don't expect those guys to get in this year or next year, and I will say it gets harder to climb the mountain the higher up you get. So getting closer to 75% is going to be really tough for those guys. But if they take a significant jump this year, and it looks like they might, yes, you're talking about something that could be historically significant.
How important is character as a factor here for the Hall of Fame?
Let me tell you something about character, Dan. And people take this out of context, and we start, who are we to decide how guys live their lives? No, to me, this is about how you played on the field, the integrity of how you played the game between the lines. I don't care what you do before the game or after the game, but did you play the game fairly? That is, to me, what character is all about, and that's why I don't vote for PED guys. They willingly cheated the game. They knew they were playing on an uneven playing field, and they made that conscious choice, so much so that they had to hide it from everybody, even to this day. So to me, when you talk about character, you're talking about how did you play the game.
Well, I also look at Curt Schilling that will call into question his character because of what he's tweeted or what his feelings are about a lot of issues, where we're not going to call into question the guys who cheated while they're playing the game. So, if you're going to weigh out character, I'm going to weigh out what you did in the game to the game as opposed to what you did after you played the game. And Schilling is not under any steroid cloud here. I find it a little hypocritical that we're going to question Schilling more than we would Bonds and Clemens.
I agree 100%. Now, I have voted for Curt Schilling. I think he's a Hall of Famer. Some of the dumb things that he has said or tweeted do not change my opinion of him as a baseball player. Now, if he does something actionable off the field in terms of lawlessness or something that really is heinous, yeah, I take a hard look at that. I'm not saying you can do absolutely anything. But yes, in terms of saying dumb things and having outlier opinions, that doesn't change who he is as a baseball player, and that's what I'm voting on.
I'm also wondering where you stand on this, that writers have, we're making that sharp turn here where we're all of a sudden looking at steroid users differently. But my thought is it is a museum, and if you want to put them in and tell the history of baseball, fine. I also think if you tested positive, if there's documentation, like Manny Ramirez does not get in and Alex Rodriguez does not get in. Do you have any problem with that if we have to have some line of demarcation here from 2003 on, let's say? If you tested positive, you're not getting into the Hall of Fame.
No, I don't have a problem with that. In fact, some of the writers are saying, hey, Hall of Fame, give us some guidelines here. Give us some voting instructions. I don't need voting instructions to know that, especially, well, as you said, we have these rules in place, and you're clearly violating these rules. There's no way you should be a Hall of Famer. So I wouldn't have a problem if that was actually legislated in as part of the voting procedure. But I do agree it's a solid line to me. You can say it's a blurry one before 2003, but since we went to steroid testing, it was part of the rules of the game everybody knew about. So I don't think the Hall of Fame, Dan, would go down that path to say, here are your voting instructions, guys. I think they like it the way that it is, partly because it creates a lot of discussion and controversy. But I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't envy you guys. And look, I take great pride in awards that I voted on or voting on the Heisman. But when it comes to this, it feels like no matter what you do, you didn't do the right job.
That's a great point. And you know what? It is less fun than it used to be, and it is hard. But because it's hard, Dan, doesn't mean you run away from it. I mean, if you're sitting on in a jury, say, in a civil trial, it's a very tough case. You don't throw your hands up and say, man, this is just too tough. I'm out of here. No, you make a decision based on the preponderance of evidence. This is not a criminal trial where you're throwing people in jail and it's innocent until proven guilty and it's beyond a reasonable doubt. It's preponderance of evidence. And for me, I consider only public evidence, not suspicion, innuendo, rumor, eyeball tests. What's out there publicly that I, as a journalist, can write connecting somebody to PEDs. And if the evidence is there, I'm not voting for you. And that doesn't change, and it will not change based on some committee or some other writer's opinion.
Which player playing now feels most like a first ballot guy?
Well, breaking news. When Clayton Kershaw throws his first pitch of this year, he's a Hall of Famer because you need a 10-year minimum, and this will be his 10th season, even with one pitch. And
he could stop right
longevity.
now. He could stop after the first pitch. Not that we want him to.
He can walk off the field and say, I'm done, and he's got my vote for the Hall of Fame because it's almost like Sandy Koufax. You don't have that longevity, but you're talking about being the best pitcher in the game for almost a decade and putting up just ridiculous numbers. That's the definition of a first-ballot Hall of Famer. And the other thing, Dad, is, next year, every vote, it will be announced, who you voted for. Now it's just at your own discretion whether you release your ballot or not. So what we're going to see are people who are going to be unanimous. Because of three people who did not vote for Junior Griffey, we still don't know who they are. Now, it's probably because somebody didn't want to be known as the person who didn't put him on the ballot. Now you can't run and hide. So whether it's Mariano Rivera or Derek Jeter, we will see a unanimous first-ballot Hall of Famer.
But do you think because these writers made a mistake in the early going where you didn't vote Babe Ruth unanimous, therefore it's all of a sudden, how can we vote you unanimous when we didn't do this to Babe Ruth or Hank Aaron or Willie Mays or some of the other greats of the game?
Yeah, to me, that's not a good enough reason. I mean, just because it wasn't right then doesn't mean it's, right today.
But how do you not vote for somebody? I don't know how somebody says Hank Aaron. I don't know, man. Or Tom Seaver or Ken Griffey Jr. I just don't know how you can rationalize that unless you want to be that guy who's the contrarian.
I'm with you, brother. I don't understand that there's no defense to it other than, yes, if you're grandstanding and want attention to yourself. Now, apparently that was not the case with the three people who didn't vote for Junior Griffey because nobody said, hey, here I am, guys. Come talk to me about my outlier vote. But I don't get it. I mean, what motivates somebody to leave someone like that who's a clear first-ballot Hall of Famer off the ballot? I mean, what's going to happen with Jeter and with Rivera? What defense could you possibly have? Because you will need a public defense if you don't put them on the ballot.
Have fun later today, Tom.
Thanks, Dan.
He's Tom Verducci.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.